Hey everybody, what's up? Um, some of you might have noticed I just went live for a second. I was testing out a um, a hummingbird live stream, and I didn't intend for it to stream to my channel, so that was an accident. But I want to stream anyway because it's been a while since I've streamed. So I'm just working on pretty simple face shell stuff today, but I haven't streamed in a while. So how's everybody doing? Yeah. So it's been a while, and I feel bad that that other stream accidentally posted to um, uh, this channel. I have a separate channel that I want to try out, just running a hummingbird live stream. Um, but yeah, so it's good to be here in front of you guys again. I still have some more plans for this live stream. A lot more organization to it coming up. I'm still a little bit buried underneath these, but I'm close to finishing the work on these, which is pretty exciting. And so yeah, I thought today would be pretty easy to just kind of sit back and do some work and kind of chat with you guys. Since I accidentally streamed for a minute, I don't want you guys to see that notification and then there not be a live stream to watch. So I've got a bunch of shells working right now, like five in the process, and then a couple more on top of that. And so I'm just working on lenses and stuff, catching up on comments here. But yeah, I haven't streamed in a little while because I'm kind of just been working on the same thing over and over here with these um, face shells. I keep doing the same stuff over and over, and I'm not getting good opportunities to um, teach you some of the more like basic steps. Like I'm not finding it easy to do. To teach you guys how to make like the lens frame part, because I get a lot of questions about that. I kind of skip over that because I have already made my frames. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, guys. It's good to see a couple of you got back. Well, all of you back. I mean, I really I'll just say I wasn't really planning on streaming today. I did this at the last second a few minutes ago because I accidentally started that other stream. But the other stream will be pretty cool. Just looking at hummingbirds all day for people who are interested in that. I'll answer your question. It's Chance. It's Chance asked, when will you show the MCU Spider-Man lenses? I do want to build up to that. The problem is that I still haven't finished the actual work on it. I need to make the more reinforced version that isn't broken. I've already broken both lenses on that original one, so I basically need to make a new version of it. And then when I'm confident that it's not too flimsy compared to how difficult it is to put together, that's when I'll be more likely to, teach you guys, because I don't want to teach you how to make something that'll break on you the way it has for me. TYU, if you're just asking about what I use, it's ABS plastic. It's eighth of an inch thick ABS plastic that is vacuum formed, and I've got other videos on that. Yeah, so I definitely do want to get to the MCU stuff for you guys. That's part of why I haven't been doing a lot of streams lately, because this is the work I've been focusing on lately, just getting caught up on this kind of mountain of stuff I've got to do with these. And I know that if I stream every day working on this, eventually you guys will get frustrated that it's not the MCU work. So I'm kind of pacing myself a little bit there. I don't have a definitive date for when I'm going to be doing it. If you guys know me at all, I'm kind of bad about setting dates and deadlines and stuff. That's kind of always been one of the issues I have. But yeah, so it'll be it'll happen eventually. I guess I'll just say, because it kind of is contingent on this stream cleaning up a little bit. Laffy Taffy asked, do you think it'll be possible to use cardboard as a substitute for the plastic face shell? You might be able to make a cardboard face shell. It just have to be really strong, and you have to use something like white glue or paper mache to strengthen it, because spandex really puts a lot of stress onto these face shells. So if it's not really sturdy, the spandex will kind of crumple the face shell in if it's not put in place well. TYU, just Google ABS plastic. ABS. That's the type of plastic it is. And you can buy it in sheets just on Amazon. And it's pretty easy to get. I buy it on big sheet. I buy big sheets of it from a local plastic distributor. And that's where I get it. Yeah, I'm sure you could find pretty good Pepakura files. And if you guys don't know what Pepakura is basically a 3D model in a computer program. Gets taken apart so that you can glue either paper or cardstock or cardboard together to recreate that 3D model, kind of like origami or just paper craft. And then you can reinforce it with like fiberglass or plastic. And that's how a lot of people make like Iron Man suits and just armor in general. But it would probably work well for that. You would just have to be sure that you smooth it out well enough so that it doesn't look like a geometric shape underneath your mask. Because remember, the goal of a face shell is to not be obvious. You don't want people to know that you're wearing a plastic shell underneath your normal mask. It's chance. I haven't really done an MCU suit yet. I've done a little bit of test stuff with this fabric over here. This might be what you're asking about. I've done some test stuff with this fabric here, and this was given to me by my friend Elfette, who does a lot of Deadpool stuff, and this is just Deadpool fabric. It works surprisingly well. The biggest problem is that it's not stretchy enough for the way I constructed it. I'd need to get my own pattern printed and stuff for it to work well. And that might happen down the line, but we'll see. I mean, my schedule's kind of full as it is, so we'll see. Your legend asked, "Are you going to mold the shells?" I've already molded the shells. That's how I made it. I made them basically. I started with a clay sculpt of the shells, and on top of a bust of not my head. I used Elfette's head actually, because he has a more normal sized head than me. And then I made molds of them, and that's what I vacuform. And I do want to get into that process too, because that's another thing is, I'm kind of missing the whole getting to this point of the shell being done. So I want to approach that more from the beginning. Like even from, getting a mannequin head or making a plaster bust of your own head, and then what kind of clay to use, how to sculpt it, how to find reference photos for whatever you're sculpting. I really want to approach all of that, essentially. So I'm trying, I'm really close here. I always say that I'm going to just like marathon through the remaining shell work that I've got and then be done with it, and then I can move on to other projects. So I'm actually kind of trying to do that this weekend so that I can just get these done. I don't have very many left, and I'm getting them done at a pretty quick rate now, so hopefully that'll be a turning point. I'll be able to kind of start focusing on the stream a little bit more, and then also on the MCU stuff, the new stuff. Laffy Taffy, I'm not sure how I would handle the different colors in printing. I imagine it's not impossible to print multiple colors, because the inks that you use in screen printing a lot of times are puff inks, which means they go on flat, and then when you bake them, that's when they rise. I'm not sure if that's the way the stuff that I got from Elfette works, but if that's the case, then you can print on multiple colors. So you could do the red parts and the black parts, and then when you bake it, they all rise together. So that might be possible. But that's not really something I've ever gotten into. I haven't done a lot of screen printing. Any, really. That's why I did puff painting. But it definitely, you can't argue with the results. Those suits that are screen printed these days look just like the movies, because, I mean, screen printing is what the movies use. Laurent, yeah, I saw that message from you the other day. I've been really bad about getting back to my messages recently. Uh, for your colored fabrics, you're basically just looking for anywhere that sells spandex. I got mine from a place in New York, I think, and you're looking for a really light sky blue fabric for your blues. You want to make sure that it's not like teal at all. There's no green color in the fabric. You want to make sure it's a light blue, and then I went with a coral color for the red, which is just a kind of a pink, a very red colored pink, so it's not too pink. But that's basically the two colors that you need. And you might be wondering, well, why not just do blue, like the color blue that the fabric is and the color red that the fabric is? The thing about dye sublimation is that when you're printing really dark colors, like if you look at this mask, it's got black basically printed in some of these areas between the pattern, and black and really dark colors are actually really hard to do with dye sublimation on darker colored fabrics. You really need a lighter colored fabric for dark colors to stand out, because the ink isn't on top of the fabric, it's inside the fabric. And so that's why if it's a darker colored red, you're not able to like print black colors. And so that's why I decided to go with a pink kind of fabric, because it boosts the red color but also can still do really dark colors like the black. All right. Chance, yeah, those black straps are kind of one of the bigger challenges, I'd say, about that project, just because it's something that is all over the suit and kind of connected, and is difficult just in general to figure out how you would go about, either gluing it on top or kind of embedding it into the suit. So I've kind of put some thought into it, but I haven't actually attempted or done any tests yet. So I'm not really at liberty to say yet, like what would be the best material. Yeah, Loro just mentioned my first live stream of today, which was of my hummingbirds. I was trying to stream that to another live stream. I was testing out having it set up to another account, but I guess the streaming code, you have a code that goes along with your stream that syncs it up from the streaming software to YouTube, and so I guess that streaming code still was connected to my original account, even though I was logged out and everything. So I kind of found out a minute into that stream that I was streaming here and had to stop it right away. And that's why I'm also doing this stream, because I don't want to disappoint you guys who saw that I was streaming and not have anything up. But someday I'll get that bird stream to work, because it's really cool watching the birds out on my porch. Got a cool variety of them. No, this is not the MCU shell I'm working on right now. This is the ASM one. I will be taking on the MCU shell, like doing a more normal version of the MCU shell like this soon. That's just kind of another one of those things on my to-do list. But I think that'd be pretty good, and it'd look more accurate, because right now my moving lenses are just too deep. They kind of ruins the movie accurate look to them. I'm reading comments right now, kind of deciding which comment thread to respond to. Laurent, yeah, any kind of like light colored red fabric will do the trick. You always want to do tests, but it is difficult because I don't know where you're getting your stuff printed, but it's difficult working with places to print on colored fabric. You can also dye the fabric, which sometimes I think is more accessible. Um, One of you asked what puff paint is. I don't know if you're messing around or not, but I mean, puff paint is just what it sounds like. It's a bottle of paint that has some dimension to it, and that's why it goes on and it looks like the 3D detailing from all the Spider-Man suits recently. It just takes a lot of effort to do it, a lot of time and discipline to just sit down and get the whole suit puff painted. I've done it a couple times, and I definitely am never looking forward to doing that again. Screen printing is definitely where it's at, but it's just expensive and a little difficult to get into it. Yeah, and it's not only fabric paint. You can do puff paint on other things. It's basically just a dimensional paint, a paint that doesn't lay down flat because of its being a liquid like every other paint typically does. In most painting classes, you'll learn about all the different textures of paint you can add. You can make, sort of a coarse sand-like paint and other. Jesus Reyes just called me McDonald's. That was nice. The funny thing is, McDonald's had a McLean sandwich in the '90s, so my uncle always called me. Well, he always called me Big Mac, but the McLean sandwich was just a little too easy, I think. Oops. Oh, that would help. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention again, since the MCU stuff is obviously the most popular stuff, and I've kind of been focusing a lot on the older movies the last few months, just getting caught up on this stuff. But yeah, I'll jump into the MCU world eventually. I just don't. I have no big rush to get into it right now. For me, the highest priority is getting this stuff done. Yeah, I've had issues with super glue in the past. This is just normal Loctite super glue. It's professional, which means it's pretty liquid. It's not like a gel. A lot of times super glue is very gel-like. It's a liquid and it sets really fast. And you could probably use an accelerator, but it sets so fast that I don't even worry about it. And I've gotten it on my fingers before, but it's never too big of an issue to get off. But you will definitely glue your fingers together a few times while learning to use it. I've thought of moving into using an epoxy, just getting all of the shells ready and epoxying all the magnets on at once. This one just doesn't want to stick. But I just have never had enough shells ready at one time to justify mixing together the batch of epoxy. But that would definitely be the best way to do it. Epoxies, you can find epoxies that it's basically just a super strong glue that can glue like anything together. The world of glues are pretty intense. But then, you run into problems if you make a mistake. That's something you have to worry about. Is the speed too. If it takes forever to set, then you're just not getting stuff done quickly enough. But that's another thing you can do. Just use something like E6000. Just got the magnets glued, so now it's magnetized and removable. In case you guys are not sure what I'm doing this for. Levi or Levy, I don't know, just asked if I went to Comic-Con last month, and no, unfortunately, I've never been to Comic-Con, which is kind of surprising. I've tried a few times over the years, but I'm just never able to get tickets for when they go on sale to the general public. It's really difficult. TYU just asked if it's okay to use a foam head for making a face shell. Yeah, just be sure that the foam head matches your head proportions, because most mannequin heads and foam heads and stuff have really tiny sizes of head, and that is, I think, mainly for like hats and helmets and stuff, so that they fit, that they don't the mannequin head isn't too big. So that's why they're usually undersized, I think. And then also like sunglasses and stuff. So you just have to make sure that it's the right size. Okay, Levi, that's easy. I knew a Levi in high school. Ace is really contributing to the conversation here. It's Chance just asked what I do for shoes in my Spidey suits. And usually what I do, just honestly, I never have very high quality shoes in my Spidey suits because I'm always at the very last minute of whatever my deadline is. That's when I'm worrying about the shoe for the first time. And so what I've always typically done is just cast the sole part. I cast just the flat rubber part that goes underneath the foot. And I cast 2 of those out of the same mold and then trim them in the shape of the shoe. And then I glue that on the outside underneath the foot under the spandex. And then inside the spandex, I put one of those insole pads. So basically, you've got the sole of the shoe, the spandex, and then the shoe insole. And that's like the most super simple way to do it. It's not the best way because you don't have structure, and like when you're walking around and running around, you'll feel your feet slip around. But that is like the bare easiest way to do it. But then you can get tuxedo slippers, I think, are really good because tuxedo slippers have a little bit of structure to them, and those are just basically slippers that kind of have the look of a shoe, and so they work really well underneath the spandex. You can also use divers shoes or boots, basically just like neoprene boots that divers wear. You basically just have to Google all of those things I just mentioned, and you'll learn kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah, so that's kind of what I know about shoes. And then you just use something like E6000. We talked about that a minute ago. That's just a really strong setting glue. The good thing about E6000 and glues like that is that they are flexible. They glue kind of, they're able to flex, and that's good for something like the bottom of a shoe. And you can also use, what's it called? Shoe glue? It's basically, shoe glue is actually designed for gluing soles. Basically, really strong glue is what you need for gluing soles to the bottom of your feet. All right. Yeah, one more. Just reading comments here, and one of you mentioned Flash. Barry mentioned Flash. I've gotten a couple of comments about that, so I've considered maybe moving into that because I definitely, I love Spider-Man and working on Spider-Man stuff, but I also don't want to be known only for that like I am right now, because that's basically all I work on when I work on this kind of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to branching out and working on other things, and so I think Flash will be a good opportunity for that, and maybe even doing a sort of my own take on it, because Flash has always been a cool one to kind of think about what would the fastest man alive have in the way of a practical suit. Um, TYU just asked about glue gun, which is good. And if we're talking about glues, I wouldn't use a glue gun for something like this. The glue gun is good for certain temporary stuff and certain applications, but the glue gun really fails when it comes to shiny, smooth stuff. Oh no, I lost a magnet. Oh well. It comes to shiny, smooth stuff like these magnets and the inside of the shell. You want to use something like super glue, and then you even want to rough up the surface. You can see that where the magnet goes, it's kind of roughed up and sanded. Because the shinier and smoother the surface is, the less there is for glue to hold onto. And glue gun glue is really bad about that. It's really bad about gluing metal things and just anything that it can't kind of get into a porous kind of thing. Don't want to lose that magnet. There it is. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in, by the way, if you're here watching. This was definitely a very unplanned last-minute stream, just because I accidentally started streaming my hummingbird stuff to the wrong channel. Someday, I'll have a channel that just is on all the time, streaming hummingbirds, and little old ladies will watch it. And it'll be on in the background at like doctors' offices and stuff. That's kind of my plan with that. But I wasn't really planning on announcing it or promoting it on this channel, so that's kind of last minute. Yeah, those ASM1 lenses are for, like Laurent said, they're for a discontinued pair of sunglasses that you could buy around the time of Amazing Spider-Man 1. So that's where these lenses are from. But I actually do have a new type of lens that I'm working on that's more accurate that I can do now. But I originally offered it with those lenses, so that's what I'm doing it with right now. Shout out to some of you guys. Juna, hi. Thanks for tuning in. Then there are just languages I don't understand. Maybe Korean or Chinese. I don't know. That's cool though. It's neat to see you guys tuning in from around the world. I also might go ahead and do the subtitle thing that YouTube allows you to do, where you can add in subtitles if you are so willing, if you speak another language. It's a neat program that YouTube has that just lets people add that themselves. So I might go ahead and do that. Have more languages. Josh, are you talking about this mask? How do I get it so rubbery? This is puff paint. Basically, the raised dimensional paint that you put on like sweaters and stuff. Just basically applied by hand, very slowly and meticulously, and it makes that really cool. I mean, this definitely is one of the coolest looking Spider-Man costumes in person, just because of that all over texture. It really has like a sort of cool, like like a sports activewear type of look to it. But it, unfortunately, that kind of just doesn't really match Spider-Man that well. If it's a kid that made his own suit in his free time. But that's the problem it always runs into. unless Tony Stark makes the suit for him. Which is kind of one thing I liked about the last movie. It kind of, frees that up a little bit. It's like, okay, so Peter Parker didn't, make all of this incredible stuff. A little bit of it is because Tony Stark exists in that world. Infamous asked if I would show people how to assemble face shell kits that people sell. I'm basically giving you all of my knowledge as far as assembling these things go. I don't know what other kits are. I don't think I've ever bought a prop from someone else. That just kind of is not what I'm in it for. I'm more about the making stuff and figuring out how to make stuff, so I've never really, bought a kit from anyone else or anything, or bought a finished product from anyone else. So I'm not really sure what goes into those other people's things. What's a stormtrooper? I've done a stormtrooper when I was young. In the 90s, when they redid the Star Wars movies and re-released them in the theaters, I was all into it. And was a stormtrooper for Halloween one year. And me and my family, my parents basically helped me make a stormtrooper costume out of craft foam and sweatpants. It was pretty funny. Good times. Yeah, glad you guys like the face shells. I have other live streams where I actually make these face shells, so you can see, what goes into forming it and making it and everything. It's been kind of boring today because I've just been gluing magnets, just kind of getting multiple shells ready to go. Trying to catch up on comment threads here. Yeah, Dalton, I'm sorry that sometimes the comments can get crazy. That's just kind of an inevitable aspect of YouTube live streams. Like if you go look at some of the more popular live streams, like basically, any cartoon show that you can think of, like South Park or Family Guy, I don't know how it's allowed, but there are just live streams on YouTube of those shows all the time, and the comments are usually like horrible. A lot of like girls advertising, porn sites and stuff, and guys spamming it and stuff. So comments can kind of get gross and rowdy on YouTube. So unfortunately, that kind of happens when more and more viewers show up. But it's nice when it's like right now, when it's just kind of a slower rate, and most people are asking questions and stuff that have to do with the stream and Spider-Man and stuff. Andy asked, why do you choose vacuum forming over 3D printing? For this specifically is why I choose vacuum forming, because 3D printing, it would be very difficult to get this thin of a tolerance and have it be this strong and flexible. That's just a slit that already exists up there. But it's so strong and flexible. I mean, I could almost stand on this thing and not worry about it breaking. And that's something that if it were this thin and 3D printed, it'd probably break. And it's also a little bit easier to just form these in bulk with 3D printing rather than 3D printing every single one. I do plan on making a new ASM2 shell structure with 3D printing though, because there's a couple things that I want to edit a little bit and update my shell, and so I'm gonna be 3D printing a new buck. And I've talked a few months ago about having Faceshell STL files available for you to print yourself, and I still am thinking about that. I'm just more cautious because I know that once a file is out on the internet, it can really get away from you. If someone had an axe to grind and they were to buy your file and then just release it and get it away from you, it could, conceivably be it. It's just it would be out there and you'd never, be compensated for the work that goes into making it. And it's up to the creator if they want to release something like that, even for free or to make it accessible. And so I'm just deciding on, yeah, once you release something like that, it's out. The cat's out of the bag. Um, Matthew asked if I could do a video on making a buck for making the face shell, and that's something I've mentioned earlier in this stream that I definitely want to get into more of the basic stuff, like how do you make the buck to vacuform, and then also how do you make a lens like this? How do you cut it out and get everything ready? One issue I'm kind of having right now is as I get more and more into 3D printing, my older techniques, like I didn't do any 3D printing for this lens frame right here. And so in the future, if I were to do this again, I'd probably 3D print it and I'd go from there. And so it's kind of one of those things where do I teach you how I did it, or should I focus on what I think is, kind of the future of it with 3D printing and sanding? And so it's kind of one of those things where I could teach you how I did it, but that's more work and stuff like that. Or I could teach you with 3D printing, but then I'm still learning there. So it's kind of more a slower process, I guess. Sea Monster asked, how do I get the eyes to stick? Well, that's what I've been doing all stream, just using little magnets. If you can see those magnets, they connect to these magnets underneath that are inside of the face shell. So it holds everything down. There you go. Laurent, that's possible. It could be. It's really difficult getting uh, colors correct for printing stuff. Um, that's kind of one fear I had when I made my print file available, is that every printer that I've ever dealt with is different. Their colors kind of come out a little bit different. Um, so unfortunately, it's just not the most optimal way to do it. Um, and I mean, yeah, it is my fault, but I mean, it's kind of just the nature of printing. It's not, um, like basically, I mean, I went through a lot of work with my printing, with my color selection of just actual printing stuff. I actually printed stuff out with my printer and then took photos of it and referenced those photos of the test prints to find the colors that I liked. So it's kind of one of those things where that was basically the only way I could go to pick my colors. And so you're definitely going to have differences between suit maker or printers and stuff. Um, Indiana Jones asked, what's the difference between speaker mesh and the mesh I make? The mesh that I make is made of plastic. Typically, speaker mesh is made out of metal, and you could shape metal speaker mesh, but it would be really hard to make it look smooth and nice, rounded shape. So the plastic is good because it's easy to form into this dome shape that I've got. Um, Yeah, maybe Laurent, I'm still thinking about Laurent's issues with his colors. Maybe it is a good idea that I pursue releasing the Photoshop version of the file so that people can actually edit colors and stuff if they run into that issue. Because a printer might have their own, they know what red colors look best from them. And so, yeah, maybe that would be the way to go. I mean, otherwise, I mean, you just have to kind of get tests done and find out. Infamous asked how much my 3D printer cost. My 3D printer was only $200, It's the Anet A8. It's not the best 3D printer by a long shot, but it prints, and you can just put the work in and get it sanded and everything. Um, so yeah, the Anet A8 3D printer. You can find that on gearbest.com, I think. Rise asked about mirrored lenses. Mirrored lenses are their own struggle. It depends on what mask you're doing it for. Like if I were to do this one, mirrored lenses, it'd be pretty difficult to get this shape out of mirrored stuff. Like I've seen other people use tints and stuff, but I can typically see the folds in the tint, and it's difficult. I got a little bit of mirrored stuff going on though with how I'm doing the ASM1 lenses. Yeah, it's difficult, Laurent, because I've never had a formal education with like picking colors uh, for dye sublimation and stuff, and it really varies from printer to printer in my experience. Because I've only dealt with 3 different printers, I think, but each one of them just had very different stuff. So it's kind of you need to work with the printer. That's good to know, though. I'm glad you told me about it because maybe I need to just go back and make it a more general red color. Infamous. I actually sculpt these shells. I've been using Blender recently just to design my 3D file for the shells, but I sculpted them and did everything by hand. So that's how I came about my shape of the face shells. Green Panda asked if resin would work for a face shell, and yeah, I used to make my face shells out of resin. You just do slush casting, or you could do like a sort of fiberglass where you just lay fiberglass material inside of your silicone mold for your face shell. That would definitely work. I just do vacuum forming because it's really high quality and it's comfortable and it's easier to mass produce. So there's a lot of reasons to go with vacuum forming. Yeah, and I hope to have the updated ASM2 stuff available very soon. I just have to be careful that I don't get buried right away again because for the last few years, I've kind of just been in this repeating cycle where I take more orders than I can handle at a time, and I get buried underneath it, and it takes me forever to fulfill the orders. So I'm really just, I'm going to be cautious the way I approach orders in the future, just since I've had the same thing happen over and over. Um, yeah, so I definitely want to go in more in depth into how to make the buck, the mold that you use for vacuum forming. But that's kind of just going to be in the series of videos on how to make your own face shell from scratch. And that's going to be, further down the line. It's hard because that's kind of necessary to get to the moving MCU lenses. I know that everybody wants to see the moving MCU lenses first, but you need to know how to make a plastic shell unless you have gotten one from somewhere else. Um, uh, I can't pronounce your name, but one of you asked, what is the best way to know about uh, orders and stuff. I'll be posting on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff. Just figuring out the way I want to do it. Yeah, Demarcus just said you need to open your own business. I've talked about this a few times in the streams. It's difficult because I'm trying to kind of angle myself more towards streaming, but at the same time, I know people want to like purchase, shells and stuff like this. But like you said, DeMarcus, it's not entirely legal because it's copyrighted material that Marvel, I think Marvel owns, and so it's difficult. I get a lot of questions about sales, especially on like the moving lenses stuff, the MCU stuff, and I'd love to be more open and outward about that stuff, but I'm just kind of hesitant to say too much about it. But I really wish I could have just a full-fledged business around it, just pumping them out round the clock. But I just have always struggled with getting to that point, or how to get to that point, basically. But I would have thought before that it would be neat to have just kind of a workshop with a few employees and just be kind of working on whatever is popular. But like you said, it's difficult with the legality of it, and I wish it would be so awesome to be able to create your own character, to create your own franchise, but it's difficult these days to create a unique idea and also to have it be seen and high enough quality that people actually care about it. So it's really difficult not to just focus on what people already really, really like, because kids all over the world love Spider-Man. He definitely is the most popular superhero in the world, I think. Infamous asked what I do to make the breathing holes. Just a regular drill bit, just drilling holes in the plastic. And I have a template that has all the holes pre-drilled into it, and I put it over the shell, and then that helps to make sure that the holes all look nice and even and organized. Otherwise, it's easy for them to kind of look messy. It's Chance asked if I sew my own suits, and yeah, I do sew my own suits with just a sewing machine and a serger. And I will be getting back to the sewing tutorials that I have to tackle still. That was the last bit of tutorials I did, and I kind of got a little jammed up in how to continue with that, because it's a lot of work that goes into those Spider-Man suits, and it's difficult to put the streaming on top of that work. And so I'm still kind of deciding how I'll go about doing that. But I will be getting back into sewing and teaching the sewing. It's also difficult because I know you guys want to see MCU stuff. You want to see how the moving lenses are done, and I've got all this other stuff it's Spider-Man related, but it's kind of off to a tangent. Yeah, Indiana Jones asked if I use the prints that I sell, and yeah, I've always pretty exclusively designed and made my own prints. Like I designed this Amazing Spider-Man 1 print, and I designed my Amazing Spider-Man 2 print. I haven't done anything other than the mask for MCU, but I want to eventually get into designing that, because I want to design it on the stream and kind of go into what goes into that. I don't know what the brand, the Dual Sew 3400, if you want to Google that. I just looked at my sewing machine and it says Dual Sew 3400 on the side. So that's a little bit of information there. Hi, Glendora. You're kind of spamming the chat a little bit. I might have to block you if you don't stop. But yeah, that's the Dual Sew 3400. I don't know what brand that is. Probably Singer or something. That's like a standard sewing machine brand. But yeah, so this has been a pretty good stream for not really being planned at all. I wasn't intending on doing a stream today, but when I accidentally started streaming my hummingbirds, that kind of forced my hand a little bit, because it's been a while since I streamed. That's too bad, Laurent. If I imagine you mean the frame part, the plastic, this part compared to the lens. I've always kind of worried about that because what I typically do for the ASM2 lenses is I glue with a more of a shock absorbing glue, because super glue is really strong, but its biggest problem, which you've found out, is when you've got something like this. I've had it happen before. You'll drop it accidentally and it'll snap. The shock will break the two apart. And so I would say just use super glue again, or you could use something like E6000 or Loctite, and you basically just need to take your lens without the frame, put it onto the face shell, and take the other one and also put it onto the face shell, and then take super glue and put super glue on the underside of your frame. So if you have your frame ready, you put super glue on the underside of your frame, but be careful not to put too much. You don't want it to spill out. Actually put little dots. You put little dots of super glue on the inside of your frame, and then just perfectly line it up, and then just set it on and hold it there tight for a minute or two. And then when you're taking it off, take your fingers and push out through the eye hole. Don't pull on the frame itself to get it off. You want to push out from underneath and actually kind of press down on top to keep the frame in place. And then once it's off, you can keep going around and hitting it with super glue to reinforce it. That's good to know, though. I've always wondered. I hoped it was strong enough and that wouldn't happen, but Green Panda asked if you buy the pattern for the suit, does it come with the fabric? Right now, if you buy it on my website, no. It is only the pattern, the digital file for the pattern. I haven't sold the actual fabric in quite a while. But just talking to Laurent just now was kind of confirmed one of my fears that the colors would be an issue between printers, which is unfortunate. I really hope that that's not something that multiple people have to deal with, because every printer is basically different with the way their colors and the printing process ultimately turn out. And so it's difficult if you're not working directly with them with colors and stuff. I'll go more in depth into how to make, actually sculpt and make the face shells, but for right now, I kind of am only showing from a certain step. And then Sebastian, I would love to show the moving lenses right now, but they're still out of commission. They're broken right now. And that's also why I haven't had any more videos or how-tos or anything. I just haven't gotten back to that yet, because I spent several weeks getting that one ready to go, and I kind of burnt myself out on it a little bit, just working on it so hard. So once it was done, I kind of put it on a shelf and walked away. But I'll definitely finish that back up, because that still has to go to Alex. Alex has been waiting so long, like everyone, for stuff from me, but that one still will go to Alex, and because he won it free last year. And then I can do more free giveaways too, which would be pretty cool. I did a comic book style suit for a fan film. Well, I guess that wasn't really comic book style. You're probably talking about like the actual art style of the comic book. I thought about doing that a few years ago, but I didn't. I didn't get to the actual making of it. So that's kind of my problem. Is I'll have an idea for a suit, but I'm just so bad about seeing it through to the end that a lot of times those ideas will just sit on a shelf until someone else does it first. Currently, no masks for sale. At the moment, I'm almost caught up, and it's kind of hard to talk about just in general on a live stream or just out here on YouTube. I talk about that every now and then on the streams. It's a little difficult talking about that stuff just because it's not totally legal, but Green Panda asked, what type of material do I use for the buck? Usually you want something like plaster or hydrocal, which is just a stronger version of plaster. But you can use anything solid that can withstand heat. So it could be wood, it could be anything that can withstand a lot of heat. But if it isn't, foam, if it's foam or something that can't withstand that 400-degree plastic, it could melt or get ruined. That one blue guy has been or asked how long I've been doing YouTube. I've had videos here and there on YouTube for several years, but I've only in the last few months started doing this stream, and I still feel like it's really, in its early stages. It's all really rough around the edges. I'm not as organized and regular with when I'm streaming, but I think it'll get better here once I get caught up with all this stuff, and I can pick a more like a consistent time to stream that works for me and then works for everyone else too. Sebastian asked where I'm from. I'm from Colorado in the United States. I'm catching up on comments here. Infamous, I'm not really sure what you mean by difference between plastic or rubber. I always just use plastic. I've never really done like rubber lenses. Green Panda asked or mentioned that other YouTubers say it's not safe to use the oven for plastic. I've done research on that. There's not a ton of research out there that's directly related to using a personal oven for heating plastic. But in the research that I've done, it seems that the biggest risk is the fumes. Actually, while you're heating and forming the plastic, those fumes being created in that moment are the most dangerous aspect. And you need ventilation and you need a fan running, and you don't want to breathe in those fumes. But then afterwards, I think that people are kind of imagining that the plastic like stains their oven, or a residue is left over in their oven, and it makes it sick. And I think that's just really not a big issue, honestly. I think that most of the issues that you're going to face with plastic and carcinogens and your food are when you're actually heating food on plastic. So let's say you have a plastic bowl that's not microwave safe. If you put a bowl of chili, that bowl, into the microwave with chili in it, then heating the plastic and the food at the same time leaches those carcinogenic chemicals into the food, and then you eat that food. And that just doesn't happen when you're vacuum forming plastic in the oven and then taking that out, and the oven is still running, it's still hot for a long time, so those fumes, it's not like they're sticking around. And then you later cook something else. I think that people's concern is that somehow the plastic leaches into the food. And honestly, I mean, I'm not an expert, so I could definitely be wrong, but I just don't imagine that it's actually a hazard. So that's a little bit of a it might be justification on my part, because it really is just so convenient being able to heat and form plastic in your own oven. But I'm not particularly worried about it. Infamous, what do you mean by do the eyes will look better with plastic or rubber? I don't really understand what you mean, because I always make plastic, hard plastic lenses, like this, not rubber or flexible, because that's kind of how Spider-Man lenses were done before Faceshells were common. Was everyone basically just had rubber lenses. So basically you had a rubber lens that was flexible, so you would glue that straight to your mask, and then when you'd put the mask on, it would force the rubber to bend just because it was glued to the mask. And that was pretty standard for Spider-Man costumes up until a couple of years ago, when having a face shell underneath became pretty common, because it adds so much to the costume. Because if you don't have a face shell, the human head really looks kind of like a peanut. under spandex. It doesn't have a sort of kind of aesthetic element of design where like the top is larger and it kind of has a streamlined shape down into the chin, and that's something that face shells give you. Whereas when you don't have a face shell, it looks a little weird. Hi, Glendora. I see you. Luff. Luff asked, what should I use for the white lenses without having to use mesh? Um, that's hard. I mean, mesh is typically how you're getting the white color out of lenses. But if it's difficult to come by, I would suggest bridal mesh. I've got other videos about this, but bridal mesh, basically when you think of a bride, how they have that white veil over their face, that's the kind of mesh that when you put it behind plastic, it kind of has that white look and has a very good, you know, reflective white Spider-Man look to it. So bridal mesh is kind of what you're looking for, I think. That's the easiest way to get to that. Um, Indiana Jones asked if the suits I make have an attached or a detached mask. When I make suits, I design the pattern. I design it so that you can have it an attached mask or a detached mask. But my preference is having a detachable mask and then having a hood on the top of the costume. It puts it pulls the neck underneath the mask when you have a hood, and then the mask just goes on over the hood. It's a little hard to describe without having some sort of visual aid to show you with, but um, Twisted asked if the STL files are coming out soon, and I covered that briefly a little earlier in the stream. Basically, I had mentioned that a few months ago about having the STL files available. I'm just still, debating if I want to make those files available right away, because it once those are available, it's kind of a cat out of the bag situation where it might get away from me a little bit. So I'll definitely, I'm going to be designing each of these shells because I want an updated, actual 3D printable design to have ready. But it's just a matter of time and getting caught up on this stuff. Green Panda asked, where do you get the fabric if you don't sell it? Basically, when you buy a file that has a Spider-Man costume on it or something, you go to a website like fabricondemand.com, and basically it's just a company that will do dye sublimation for you. You give them the file. It's for people who want to make like a blanket with their family photo on it, typically, but you can use websites like that. You ask them if they print on spandex, or they'll say it in their description, and you give them the file that you purchase off of Selfie or something like that, and then they'll print it for you and ship you the fabric. And then after that, all you need to do is find a seamstress, or if you can sew it together for yourself. It's pretty easy once you kind of figure out which sites to go through. And then if you want to go even further, you can find local printers or other printers, because there's a wide range of quality in dye sublimation. There are some places are higher quality than others. So it pays to just kind of look around for that. Loro Vesgo asked if spray paint would work for the shoe sole. That can be difficult. Spray paint doesn't work for a lot of stuff. It's just not a super durable stuff when it comes to painting costume pieces, unless they're hard pieces like armor or something that's been treated like foam rubber. But for a shoe sole, I think that'd probably wear off pretty quickly. You're probably better off just actually since I cast stuff in like rubber and stuff, I typically just color the rubber itself. And then it can't, there's no layer of paint to rub off because it's actually the color that it is. Kind of like actual shoe soles. Vivimizi asked about urethane webbing versus puff paint. And you mentioned that you're new or it's your first costume. If it's your first costume, urethane webbing is probably going to be out of the question because urethane webbing is difficult unless you have someone who's making it and supplying it for you. You might be able to find urethane webbing around, but it's difficult to make yourself. So puff paint is the ideal beginner way to go about making webs and stuff. And it's not the most durable and it's not the most professional looking, but for the price versus the finished product, it definitely is worth it. Yeah, Infamous. That's basically what I was talking about earlier with the rubber versus the plastic lenses. Basically, rubber is just flexible so that if you don't have a face shell or if you don't know what the shape of the face shell looks like, it will lay down flat against that shape. Whereas, like a hard plastic lens like this isn't necessarily going to look good on every single mask because the shell kind of needs to have a recess for it, and so a rubber lens might be better for your situation because a rubber lens can just curve flat and hug right against it, whereas this one is only the shape that it is. It kind of works because the two shells are such a similar shape, but for anything else, it might be too big of a difference. Um, but yeah. Uh, Captain Red Ducky asked if you can use something else other than puff paint. You can use silicone, anything that's gonna stick to, you know, is gonna, stick and stay on the fabric and also be flexible. I mean, you can use that. I mean, and also you don't have to detail the fabric. A lot of times, this is a dye sublimated shirt design. A lot of times it looks cool enough, just straight dye sublimated. You don't necessarily always have to do three-dimensional like webbing and urethanes and things like that, because a lot of times the urethanes and the puff paint stuff can just kind of complicate it. It can make it um, harder to wear. It can kind of start to break down and look rough around the edges later on, a few years later. And, just a straight up dye sublimated suit can be the most, flexible, not have to worry about stuff breaking. It's just that, I've worn a few suits with the 3D details, and people really definitely do like the addition of that. But you don't have to. Especially if it's like one of your first suits, it might be better just to start with a regular dye sublimation suit. That one blue guy, yeah, you asked if you could do a more proportionate, slim face shell. Yeah, it really just depends on what look you're going for, and kind of learning to make your own face shells. And if you're looking for a slim look, you might be able to go just without a face shell, because the human head looks a little weird. But if you're going for slim, that's definitely what the natural human head under spandex looks like, is just slim. I've done craft foam lenses before, Green Panda, and it works, but they're just not the most durable things. They kind of tear and rip under stress. Spidey Life asked how the mechanical lenses are coming. I mentioned that earlier. Right now, they're both just broken. Both lenses are in a broken state, and I need to go back and actually I basically need to make a new shell at this point, like a version 3, because I learned a lot during my version 2. And then once version 3 is ready, I think that's when I'll be able to have it a lot more accessible and also be able to teach more about it because I'll kind of fix some of my mistakes. Infamous, once again, Infamous asked what paint would look good for rubber lenses. A lot of times, if it's like rubber or, flexible, you don't want to paint it. You just want to cast it the color that you want it to be. Like if you want black lenses, you just cast it with black rubber. And then you're not worrying about having to paint it or finish it and have something to scrape off because the rubber is just the color that you want it to be. And so that's how I do it a lot of times. A lot of times I just try to avoid painting because painting can be less durable, basically. Like when you think about toys, a lot of times the toys you buy are just actually the color of plastic. The color they are, that's the color the plastic is, so that you don't have to worry about a layer of paint scratching. Hey, Jared. Yeah, long time no see. I haven't done a ton of streams this summer, though. I kind of slowed down over the summer after finishing the moving lenses. Yeah, Loro Vesgo asked if I'll do a video for casting rubber. I'm sure. I've one thing I want to teach is how to cast latex rubber because that's a really easy intro to casting with plaster and rubbers and plastics and things like that. With the transparent part, I make the clear part with vacuum forming, so you can see the lenses here untrimmed, but I've already formed them. I just have to trim them now. So that's how I do that component. But if you look at my past videos, I've got one stream in particular about white mesh lenses and making your own white mesh lenses. And in that stream, I do a little mini tutorial about making your own clear lenses with a 2-liter soda bottle. And so that's a option for sure if you're just starting out. The Dark Knight asked how much does it cost to make these shells, and when you're making it yourself, it's not too bad. There are certain costs like plaster and clay and the casting materials, but it's not too bad. It's about the same price probably as when you go out and buy one from someone. It's just that you have to go through the process of casting it and sculpting it and everything, and the possibility that it won't turn out the way you hope. It's definitely a learning curve to sculpting these things. Infamous, if you do have to paint rubber lenses, you could use a black latex-based paint. Latex-based paint is really good for covering flexible stuff and then staying flexible itself. That's basically the biggest problem, is that when you paint something that's flexible, if the paint itself isn't flexible, then when it flexes, the paint will crack and break off and stuff like that. So you have to find a really flexible paint. Plastidip is another paint that's really good for flexible stuff like craft foam. And then you can also, well, not with like rubber lenses, but if you're doing like a craft foam frame, you could like treat it with white glue, and that would make it a little easier to paint. If you're starting with a scratch bodysuit and just making a Spider-Man costume, you'd probably want, I don't know, that's kind of a tough question because he's pretty equally red and blue colored. Probably blue and then add the red components onto it, but that's kind of a difficult way to approach it. I'm catching up on comments here, looking at which thread to go into. Yeah, that one blue guy you mentioned elastic and string. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I actually do have a pretty complex elastic system inside of the shell. It's just a kind of a matter of everything is just so pressed together to get it to be as thin as possible that it kind of is just inevitably a little thick, and then also everything is a little tougher to move around. So it kind of I have some ideas of how I'm going to make it look a little bit more accurate, make it a little flatter, and then a little easier to move too. But I just have to actually incorporate all that stuff and work on it. Um, Green Panda, that's typically what you do. You make a mold out of clay, you sculpt with the clay, and then you take silicone, and then you make a mold with silicone of what you've sculpted, and then you're able to cast with plastic and plaster and all number of things inside of your silicone mold. So that's definitely kind of the process of making a silicone mold. Vivimizi, I don't know. I'm probably my whole life. I mean, Spider-Man costumes will be around forever. I think he's a popular enough character that he's just going to keep coming around every 2 or 3 years in a new suit. The best magnets are neodymium, I think is how you pronounce it, and basically just rare earth magnets. That's what these are right here. The little silver, super powerful magnets that you see, are like the buckyballs. I think that's what those were called, and that's the same type of magnet as those. They will rust if you touch them with water, so you kind of have to be careful about that. That's weird. Yeah, Devan just mentioned that his alert was late. Yeah, I've heard of people having that happen too. Um, Dark Knight asked about beginner starting a face shell as a beginner, and it's hard to get into all of that right now. But basically, it's just sculpting the face shell on top of either a mannequin head or a bust of your own head, and then molding that. And I'll definitely be getting into the whole process, like from beginning, just with scratch, because for the last few months, I've just kind of been starting at the end or the middle. Yeah, I've Captain Red Ducky asks if I make props. I make props every now and then. I just kind of make random stuff. Those who know me know it's kind of rare for me to get to a finished product. I'm kind of all over the place usually, and I'll start an idea and then it'll kind of disappear and never come to fruition. Griffcart asked, "What's the highest quality suit I could get by Halloween?" I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in other people's stuff, but maybe the RPC studio. Most places are probably going to take a little while. It's kind of difficult finding high quality, cheap, fast stuff out there. That's kind of why you need to learn to make your own stuff. I think it's usually easier when you have control over it yourself. I'll probably do a replica of the web shooter. That kind of goes into what my plan will be with making the full MCU suit. And that's kind of still up in the air. My plans with that. So as soon as I start working on that, I'm sure I could probably do the web shooter. Yeah, if the other thing is right now, you're definitely getting into if you're planning on buying something for Halloween, most makers get really, really busy right around Halloween because that's kind of the busy time of year. Um, DJ Jazzy Jabba. That's it's hard to read. DJ Jazzy Jabba um, asked what if there are any links for good MCU Spidey, and I'm trying to think what the name of it is. I think it's like reflective dot spandex. If you want to just find a good spandex that actually kind of already looks like the MCU Spidey, look up holographic dot spandex or reflective dot spandex. Basically, it's just a spandex that has just little circles of reflective. They kind of look like rhinestones or anything like that, and that's the intention of it. But it actually looks a lot like sort of the printed Spider-Man fabric and stuff too. Um, so you can look that up. I tried to order some actually, but the place that I tried to order it from was out of stock, so I couldn't get any. Um, Sponge asked how I got into cosplaying, and basically I got into it how everyone gets into it. Just enjoying Spider-Man, enjoying a bunch of video games and stuff when I was younger, and you want to like get further into that world. You want to kind of get as close to the awesome fictional worlds that we enjoy as kids, and that always kind of was what pushed me when I was younger. I would build props from like Zelda video games and build like Batman and Spider-Man stuff. I did Star Wars stuff. Like Boba Fett was the first kind of full costume I decided to work on. And I'm not even really sure what made me make that Boba Fett costume. I just remember that I was in 7th grade and I saw an advertisement for Starfest in the newspaper because this was in Colorado, and it said there was a costume contest, and for some reason I just decided that I had to make a Boba Fett costume for that costume contest. And then I actually came in, I think second in the Star Wars division, either first or second in the actual Star Wars costume part of the contest, which was pretty cool. I think that was a big encouragement that kept me going and making all this stuff. I kind of lucked out because I was such a beginner, and that Boba Fett costume was definitely not like an accurate Boba Fett costume. So I probably wouldn't have won anything in a standard costume contest, but because the categories were like there was a Star Wars trophy and there was anime, the way they did it that year kind of lent itself to me winning that category, which was neat. So that was kind of how I got into it, and then I've just been making stuff in my free time ever since for fun. And in the last few months, I just have decided to kind of open up the process and do these live streams and kind of talk about how I do it. And it's been fun. I've really enjoyed these live streams and hanging out with all you cool people. Yeah, I've heard of Zentai Zone. I've heard of all of the other places doing stuff. I've just I don't, like I said earlier in the stream, I don't buy stuff from other makers. Like I don't you know not I don't do it to look at it or gain insight or really anything. I typically just make my own stuff, so I don't have a lot of experience with the other mm, you know suit companies out there as far as like quality and stuff like that. Um, that's a good question. Cars dog just asked if for face shells if you should do a half face shell or a full face shell. Um, the full face shell looks better just in general. I had a problem with um, the half face shell. I have a video of me at WonderCon, and I have been getting a lot of comments about people criticizing that half face shell, which is weird because I don't think it looks that weird. I can see the weirdness of it, but I have like a lot of comments of people saying that the mouth looks weird and that it looks like an alien and that the head is sticking out. And you just end up getting a lot of stuff like that on YouTube. But I think it also might just be a component of that half face shell. It just really depends on you have to. It's delicate around the nose. It's hard around, um, uh, like around the cheeks and around the mouth. It's just hard not to have your nose disappear off your face. Um, and so, yeah, the half face shell is difficult. Trying to see how much energy battery power I've got left in my phone here. I've been going for about an hour and a half. Yeah, about an hour and a half. Pretty good for not even planning on doing a stream today. But yeah. Hi Sonia. There's your shout out. Okay, let me try reading your comment. That one blue guy said, I tried making moving lenses for the homemade costume in Homecoming, but the goggles were too small to fit it all. Any ideas? Yeah, actually, I do have some ideas for that. Basically, my idea, if I were to do moving lenses for Homecoming, for the homemade version, I would do. So you know how with my moving lenses, everything's happening inside of the face shell. You only can see through the eye hole opening, but all of the movement and everything is happening inside of the face shell. Um, what I would do for the homemade version is I'd basically just do it exactly the same way I do my moving lenses for MCU, but then I'd just put the goggles on top of it. So basically you'd see through the goggles and then see the moving lenses through the goggles. It's still happening the same way inside of the shell and everything, but then you just would have the circular, goggle opening to see into it, and then maybe light it a little bit, and then, have so you could see the actual shutters. Yeah, Lego, it's difficult to make videos sometimes. I mean, even I get criticized a lot for, the way I talk and, kind of the nature of these streams. Sometimes people don't like this first person version of the stream, and you just have to kind of shake it off. Like Taylor Swift says, you just have to have thick skin, and if someone doesn't like it, so what? I mean, you're putting something out there and putting something into the world. You just can't, put too much um, value in those haters, opinions when people just kind of come by and criticize everything. And you'll get better if you're worried about the way you sound or anything like that. You'll get better, and you can also take classes. You can take classes in public speaking. You can do theater. Theater helps a lot for public speaking and stuff. I recommend theater to everyone who's young. I did theater in high school, and I thought that was a lot of fun. It was, very social, a lot of group stuff always going on, and so I recommend that definitely. If your school has theater, definitely get involved in that. And then you're learning to make stuff too. You can help out with like production and things like that. Um, Moving into real life and doing technical theater and stuff like that for a career can get pretty complicated and competitive, but it's definitely a fun thing to do in school. Devan, I don't know if you're asking about me. I've done the Sam Raimi mask. I haven't done a face shell for it though. I only did the actual mask. Like people have been doing for a long time, where you just do the mask and then glue the lenses straight to that. I have a picture of that on my Instagram account from a few years ago, because that was back when Spider-Man 3 came out with the symbiote suit. I think I need to make a Sam Raimi mask though, just since I have a pretty good movie Spider-Man mask collection as it is. So I need to finish it with the Raimi mask. But it's its own challenge. It has a lot of unique challenges because the Raimi mask, if you look at its lenses, it has a airbrushed effect around the inside of the lens that gives it a little more depth, and that's a little difficult to put on there and make look really nice and neat. That's funny. Sonia just said that her son watches the stream, and so she ends up helping out a lot with some of these things. It's interesting because I've only been doing these streams for a few months, and that's definitely something I've thought a lot about how I go about handling this stuff in a beginner way, because where I'm at, this is pretty advanced. This is kind of I won't say as advanced as it gets with Spider-Man stuff, because you learn, you can do silk screen and or screen printing and stuff like that. But this is pretty advanced stuff, so it's difficult to kind of translate some of these more advanced techniques into something that is accessible, because it's not very useful if I'm doing this stuff, but I'm skipping the stages that you need to know about to get here. Which is kind of currently, I know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of missing certain steps that keep you from getting here. But it's interesting how to tackle that, basically. I think I need to kind of have days where I do very, very basic tutorials, like kind of introductory stuff. Because there are definitely projects that you can start out with that are great, leaping off points to learn how to do other stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. Lego Builder is talking about his potential YouTube channel. I just 2 days ago went down to the YouTube space in Marina Del Rey here in Los Angeles, and I went to a little class on how to do it-yourself videos, and it was really cool because there were a lot of other YouTubers there. There's like about a dozen of us. And it was just interesting. A whole bunch of different other channels, like kind of like men's grooming and baking and teaching other languages. And so it was interesting. All these other DIY channels, and they all, I think, they all had much larger followers and more established for sure. But it was still really interesting learning about like what goes into making a YouTube channel and being successful with it. It really seems like the key to having a successful YouTube channel is just having stuff that people want to watch. I mean, that probably sounds basic and kind of dumb, but you really just have to have the stuff people want to watch, that they want to come and look at. And then everything else helps out a lot. Consistency, the quality of your videos, all that helps. But I mean, without the key content, it without the content, that's the key. So anyone wanting to get into YouTubing, just know that you might have something that you're really into and you're really knowledgeable about, but you just have to be aware that if people don't want to watch that, or if it's just not getting the views, that's it's hard to make people want to watch things, basically. Yeah, so I'm catching up on comments here. I'm trying to pick which comment here to respond to. Cars Dog asked about charity cosplay. Someone else would probably have to answer that. I'm not sure, because I've actually never gone and done any charity kind of cosplay stuff. Because wearing the costumes has never been a huge part of it for me. I say that all the time in these streams, but making things is kind of where my heart is at in all of this. So I haven't done a lot of that stuff. Infamous, if you're designing a suit, you Photoshop is pretty much the best program to use. I've got a couple streams that go into the basics of that, but yeah, I would say Photoshop. Oh yeah, Captain Red Ducky asked earlier. I haven't. I wanted to do Captain America right when Captain America came out a few years ago, because that suit was really cool. That first um, Avengers suit that they made for him. But it's just one of those projects that kind of fell through and I never got finished. I did do Iron Man before I did any of this Spider-Man work. I did Iron Man like 5 or 6 years ago, and haven't worked on any Iron Man stuff since then. I might, since I've gotten into 3D printing, I might try to do another Iron Man suit in the next, I don't know, year or so. Because Iron Man suits are just so cool in person. Lego, I think I am already subbed to you. I think you asked me that before. Um, yeah, I don't really go around and sub to too many channels. Um, I would do a Captain America shield, but I'm not too knowledgeable in like the metals, forming metals and things like that. But that would be an interesting project to work on. It's kind of one of those things I've always picked projects to work on based on like where there are holes, where maybe things could be made better. And Captain America Shield, I feel like that was knocked out of the park right away. People really got that one down. So it's one of those things where it's, do you make it or do you just buy the really high quality one from the person who's already knocked it out of the park? And since, like I said, it's not really a big, wearing the costumes isn't the biggest part for me, so I kind of just don't do that. Yeah, fiberglass or something like that's probably how I would end up actually tackling it, just because I don't have a lot of experience in metal. But it is kind of difficult to get those metal effects on fiberglass. For me, I don't have a lot of experience with that. The first cosplay I ever did, by the way, I would say probably Boba Fett. Although, I mean, I did a lot with like Zelda because the Ocarina of Time Zelda game came out when I was like 7 or 8 probably, and so that, I mean, I remember making all of the weapons and props from that game, and I even made a green tunic. I remember my dad used to have an embroidery business where he would embroider logos onto shirts, for companies and stuff. And if they'd ever mess up, they basically just couldn't do anything with the garments. So they just put them in boxes. So I would remember when I was younger taking the shirts out of those boxes of messed up garments, and I would take like a green polo shirt and a stapler and actually staple it into a tunic, or a blue one or a red one, because Link had all kinds of tunics. And yeah, I've just always, from a very young age, making stuff and making props and costumes was always just a lot of fun and a way to kind of enjoy these properties further. Um, yeah, and I missed the original comment, but I want to start doing more of a regular schedule. I've just have kind of been a little scatterbrained with the stream so far, and I also have some ideas to get things a little nicer and a little more organized. Uh, and so those will be coming up in the next couple of weeks as I get caught up on these projects, because there are a couple projects that I've just been behind on for such a long time now that I'm almost caught up on, and once those are caught up, I'll be able to dive into other projects. But yeah, that'll kind of come at the same time as the stream gets a little more official, gets a little more organized. I'm gonna try and do the same time every week or every few days, whatever it ends up being. Because I really enjoy these streams. I like sitting out here and talking a lot. because I do talk a lot. Griff Cart asked about Comic Con next year and moving lenses. Yeah, I definitely think I'll have more info on the moving lenses by then. I want to make videos on that pretty soon because my channel is getting bigger. It's getting more official. I'm getting more viewers and stuff. And so I think the time is definitely coming is close that I'll be teaching you guys that stuff, and not worrying about uh, people stealing it or anything like that. Or well, not stealing it, but a lot of times people will pick something up from one person, then turn around and claim that they came up with it themselves. So yeah, Sonia asked. She said that her son said I should do a Deadpool cosplay. I almost actually did the Deadpool mask to do the expressive Deadpool eyes, because right after Deadpool came out, I was actually planning on doing a Deadpool mask that had the expressive eyes, because I had actually had that idea for moving eyes a year or two before that movie, and that Deadpool movie came out in February, and then the Spider-Man preview, or the preview for Captain America Civil War, came out in that March with the moving lenses for Spider-Man. So I had actually already bought the materials for a Deadpool mask, and it was just at that moment that Spider-Man trailer dropped, and I was like, oh well, obviously I have to do it for Spider-Man and not Deadpool. And so I haven't really thought about going back to Deadpool since then, because like Devan said, my friend El Fett, Fernando, he does a lot of Deadpool stuff. I have a stream, actually, if you look at my past streams, where he is a guest, and he brings a couple Deadpool stuff with him, like the mask. I think he brought the mask with him. And we talk about it a little bit. But yeah, Deadpool is really cool stuff. But that's another one of those things I mean, the suit's really been hit out of the park by El Fett and the people he's working with. Hey Luke, thanks for viewing from the UK. Thanks all of you worldwide viewers. It's really neat being able to talk to people around the world. Sorry, I just twitched my phone a little bit. Amar asked about if there's any way to do good vision in a Spider-Man 2099 mask. That's pretty difficult, because you kind of have to match the surface of what the eyes are to the rest of the mask. So that's kind of it's a little difficult, which is probably why you're asking. You just need to kind of have either a translucent enough fabric that you can see out of. Like sometimes people who wear Green Man suits just look right out of the spandex for eyesight. So you could kind of do similar stuff like that, but it's difficult. It's difficult to do the eyes on the 2099 mask. Cars dog, you just said that most Batman masks are rubber. Would it be hard to do a fabric one? It's funny because I mean the old Batman mask, the original one was fabric. The one that Adam West wore in the '60s, it's got a hard plate, but it has fabric elements to it. So yeah, you could do that. It's hard. It's also difficult to size out patterns, Matthias. You have to kind of do your research on how to size out a pattern from the beginning. Um, yeah, so it's difficult to talk about sales and stuff. I see you guys talking about that stuff. But maybe soon. We'll see. I'll definitely be making it known to everyone, based on what's available. Also, my phone is giving me warnings here, so I might disappear on you. If I do, that just means my battery died. But I think I actually have been out here for a pretty good chunk of time. Um, probably call it at that. I've been out here for 105 minutes. It's funny, when I was at my little YouTube meeting with other YouTubers, they were all pretty surprised at how long I do streams. Um, they they were kind of impressed that I can do streams for several hours. But I like it. You know, it's fun just kind of sitting around and working on stuff and chatting with everyone. But yeah, I'd say since my phone's about to die, I'll probably call it at that. It's been fun hanging out with everyone, catching up. I'm still trying to get my streams more regular, but it is also an issue when I kind of am working on the same things over and over in each stream. So that's a little bit of something for me to consider. Mithun, Mithun, there's your shout out. All you guys, thanks for watching. Good group. Um, Sonia, really quick, I'll answer your question. If you don't have a 3D printer, if you're doing a very beginning face shell, I would say probably just doing paper mache, like doing thick, a lot of paper mache. You could basically like blow up a balloon to the size of the head that you're trying to do. So, say to your son's head size, you blow up a balloon, maybe use some scotch tape or something to give it some shape, and then do paper mache, which is just flour, water, and you can add white glue to make it even stronger. You dip either fabric or newspaper into the paper mache, and then you put that paper mache all over that balloon that you've blown up and then taped to get to their proper shape. And you let that dry. You put a lot of it on. You'd need a really thick layer of it, but I think that would be the best beginner method for a face shell. Maybe I'll try to tackle that with a video. Um, but that would be probably the most accessible means of doing it. But yeah, so now that I've gotten into that, or answered that question at the last minute, um, it's good seeing you guys again. I'll be on again soon, probably next week sometime, as I catch up on all this stuff. But yeah, I'll see you guys then soon. And also, I'll get better at posting when I'm going to live stream. I've been really bad about advertising it, but I will definitely be better about advertising when I'm going to stream and what I'll be talking about. So that'll happen in the future for sure. So thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. You guys are awesome.